I want you to take a compass. Go on. I'll wait. Now place the point on Istanbul. Draw a circle with a radius of 3,500 kilometers. Inside that circle, you will find 57 countries. You will find London and Moscow. You will find Cairo and Riyadh. You will find Mumbai and Karachi. You will find Warsaw, Budapest, Bucharest, and every capital of the former Soviet sphere. You will find the entire Middle East, the whole of North Africa, the Caucasus, and Central Asia as far as Kazakhstan. No other city on earth contains this many countries, this many people, and this many major economies within a single medium-haul flying radius. Not Dubai, not Frankfurt, not Singapore. Istanbul's geographic position is, by any objective measurement, the most strategically valuable hub location in commercial aviation. And right now, in 2026, that statement has never been more relevant, more tested, or more complicated than it is today. Because the Gulf crisis that has affected Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Doha simultaneously has done something to Istanbul that no airline strategist could have fully modeled in advance. It has made Istanbul the most sought-after alternative connecting hub on Earth, and it has simultaneously disrupted Turkish Airlines' own network more severely than almost any other carrier outside the Gulf. That contradiction, the most valuable hub in aviation simultaneously crippled by the very crisis that makes it most valuable, is the story I want to tell today. To understand why Istanbul's geography matters so much, it helps to compare it directly with its nearest competitors. Dubai sits further south. Its 3,500 kilometer radius captures the Middle East, East Africa, South Asia, and parts of Central Asia beautifully, but it misses most of Europe. London is 5,500 kilometers from Dubai. Frankfurt is 4,800. These are not medium-haul flights. They are long-haul sectors requiring wide-body aircraft and generating significant fuel costs. Emirates connects Europe to Asia brilliantly, but the European leg of every journey is long-haul, which constrains frequency and raises operating costs on both ends. Frankfurt sits at the heart of Europe. Its radius covers Europe comprehensively and reaches into North Africa and the western edges of the Middle East, but it barely touches Asia. Mumbai is 6,200 kilometers from Frankfurt. The Asian half of the world requires genuinely long-haul flying from Germany. Singapore is extraordinary for Southeast Asian and Australasian connectivity, but Europe is 10,000 kilometers away. North America is 15,000 kilometers away. Singapore's centrality is regional rather than global. Istanbul is the only major city on Earth that sits at the genuine intersection of all of these regions simultaneously. Europe is close. London is 3,600 kilometers. Frankfurt, 3,200. Paris, 3,400. The Middle East is close. Dubai is 3,400 kilometers. Riyadh, 2,500. Africa is close. Cairo is 1,700 kilometers. Nairobi, 4,500. Central Asia is close. Almaty is 3,600 kilometers. Tashkent, 3,200. South Asia is reachable. Mumbai is 4,400 kilometers. Delhi, 4,000. This means that from Istanbul, Turkish Airlines can connect passengers between almost any 2 points in the Eastern Hemisphere with a single stop. A passenger flying from Lagos to Almaty, from Warsaw to Nairobi, from London to Karachi, from Bucharest to Mumbai. All of these journeys are geometrically efficient through Istanbul in a way they simply are not through Dubai, Frankfurt, or Singapore. This is the geographic foundation of everything Turkish Airlines has built. But geography alone does not build an airline. What Turkish did with this geography is the story worth telling. In 2003, Turkish Airlines was a typical state carrier, underperforming, overstaffed, focused on domestic Turkish routes, and a modest international network serving the obvious European and Middle Eastern destinations. It carried around 20 million passengers annually and was not regarded as a serious competitor by the major European or Gulf carriers. That year, Turkey partially privatized the airline and installed management with a clear strategic mandate: build a global network using Istanbul's geographic position as the primary competitive weapon. What followed was one of the most aggressive network expansion programs in aviation history. Turkish went from serving around 60 international destinations in 2003 to over 300 international destinations today, a number that no other airline on Earth matches. They did this by doing something their competitors largely were not doing. They went to the cities nobody else was serving. When Ethiopian Airlines expanded across Africa, it was building a continental network. When Emirates expanded globally, it was primarily targeting high-volume routes between major cities. Turkish did something different. They identified every city in every country that had enough traffic to fill an aircraft at any frequency, and they went there. Small African capitals that Emirates considered too thin to serve. Secondary cities in Central Asia that no European carrier thought commercially viable. Balkan cities that Lufthansa and Air France had written off as marginal. Turkish went to all of them. And each new destination added two things simultaneously. Local passengers who could now fly Turkish to Istanbul and connect onward, and new connecting itineraries for passengers elsewhere in the network who previously had no efficient way to reach that city. This is network economics at its most powerful. Each new destination does not just add one route, it adds a connection to every other destination in the network. When Turkish opened a new route to a secondary African capital, they were not just serving passengers from that city to Istanbul. They were serving passengers from that city to London, to Frankfurt, to Mumbai, to every other point on the network via Istanbul. The network value of each new destination is multiplied by every existing destination already served. By around 2015, Turkish had reached a network density where this multiplier effect was generating enormous connecting traffic volumes through Istanbul. By 2025, Turkish had expanded its African presence from 0 regular connections in the early 2000s to 64 African destinations, making it one of the most significant carriers on the continent. International to international transit passengers reached 2.8 million in January 2025 alone, up 8.5% year on year, confirming that Istanbul's connecting hub function is growing faster than the airline's own point-to-point traffic. The fleet that serves this network is built around a specific strategic logic. Turkish operates over 500 aircraft across narrow-body and wide-body types, ending 2025 with 516 aircraft, after a 5% fleet expansion despite global delivery bottlenecks. The narrow-body backbone, primarily Airbus A320 family and Boeing 737 variants, covers the short and medium-haul routes where frequency matters more than capacity. European cities, Middle Eastern destinations, the Balkans, North Africa. These aircraft bring passengers into Istanbul at high frequency, feeding the wide-body, long-haul departures that connect to Africa, Asia, and the Americas. The wide-body strategy is where Turkish has made its most interesting choices. Turkish operates the Boeing 787 Dreamliner on medium long-haul sectors in the 8 to 12-hour range, routes to East Africa, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and the Americas, where fuel efficiency and the 787's superior cabin environment make it the optimal aircraft. The lower cabin altitude that the Dreamliner's composite fuselage enables matters disproportionately on Turkish's connecting itineraries, where a passenger flying from a secondary European city to a South Asian destination via Istanbul might spend 15 or 16 total hours in the air. The cabin environment on the long-haul sector shapes their entire experience of the journey. The Airbus A350 serves Turkish's highest volume and longest routes, where the 787's capacity is insufficient and where range needs to be pushed further. As Turkish continues expanding into the Americas and deeper into Asia, the A350's range capability and larger cabin become increasingly important. The dual wide-body strategy gives Turkish the flexibility to match aircraft to route without being constrained by a single type's limitations, and it reflects the extraordinary diversity of a network that spans sectors from 90 minutes to 13 hours. There is a dimension of Turkish's network that does not appear in passenger statistics, but is central to the commercial viability of its African and Asian expansion. Belly cargo. Turkish Cargo has risen to become the world's third largest air cargo carrier in terms of cargo ton kilometers, a remarkable position for what began as the cargo division of a passenger airline. On many of Turkish's thinner long-haul routes, secondary African cities, smaller Asian markets, the passenger revenue alone does not make the route commercially viable at the frequency Turkish wants to operate. Cargo revenue fills that gap. The combination of passenger yield and cargo yield makes routes viable that pure passenger economics would render marginal. This is precisely how Turkish justifies the network breadth that competitors find difficult to replicate. Istanbul Airport itself is a strategic asset that deserves direct attention because the infrastructure Turkish operates from is as important as the aircraft fleet it operates with. The old Ataturk Airport, which Turkish used until 2019, was chronically constrained. Slot limitations, terminal capacity, runway configuration, all of it restricted the growth trajectory of Turkish's hub operation. Istanbul Airport, which reached full operational capacity over the following years, removed that ceiling almost entirely. Istanbul Airport alone continues to rank among the world's busiest international hubs, with daily movements exceeding 1,600 flights on peak days. It was designed with ultimate capacity, exceeding 200 million passengers annually, with 6 runways at full build-out and terminal infrastructure scaled for genuinely global ambition. For Turkish Airlines, the new airport was not just an upgrade. It was the strategic enabler that unlocked a growth trajectory the old airport could not have supported. The numbers that result from this combination of geography, network strategy, fleet philosophy, cargo operation, and hub infrastructure are worth stating directly. Turkish Airlines carried 92.6 million passengers in 2025, generating record total revenues of $24.1 billion, up 6.3% year-on-year. Net profit reached $2.2 billion. Passenger revenues grew 7.4%, driven by strong demand in international and premium segments. The airline invested $6 billion in 2025 alone, bringing total investments over the past 5 years to approximately $20 billion. Turkish Airlines chairman Ahmet Bolat has set a target of 100 million passengers for 2026, a target that looked straightforward when it was set, but that the Gulf crisis has made significantly more complicated to achieve. Turkish serves over 120 countries, more than any other airline on Earth. United Airlines serves around 60. Lufthansa Group, across all its subsidiaries, serves approximately 100. Turkish does it with a single airline brand from a single hub. The country count matters strategically beyond the prestige of the statistic. Every country Turkish serves that its competitors do not is a market where Turkish has no direct competition for the connecting traffic flowing through Istanbul. That pricing power on thin routes, multiplied across dozens of markets where Turkish has no meaningful competition, generates a revenue premium deeply embedded in the yield structure of the network. And then came the Gulf crisis. And here is where the story becomes genuinely complicated in ways I want to be direct about. The intuitive expectation when the Gulf hubs closed was that Istanbul would be the primary beneficiary. Passengers rerouting from Dubai, Doha, and Abu Dhabi would flow through Istanbul instead. Turkish Airlines, with its 300 destination network and its perfectly positioned hub, would absorb the displaced traffic and emerge from the crisis with a permanently stronger competitive position. The reality, as of the beginning of April 2026, is considerably more nuanced. Turkish Airlines canceled all flights to Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan, and suspended services to Doha, Dubai, Kuwait, Bahrain, Abu Dhabi, and Dammam. The suspensions affect both passenger and cargo flights from Istanbul and Antalya. Turkish Airlines' own routes to South and Southeast Asia, East Africa, and Australasia have been disrupted precisely because many of those routings transit or border the closed airspace over Iran, Iraq, and surrounding areas. The airline that was supposed to be the beneficiary of the Gulf closure has itself been forced to suspend dozens of its most profitable medium-haul routes because those routes fly through the same general region that is causing the crisis. Turkish Airlines has issued a broad travel advisory outlining flexible options for passengers booked on affected routes throughout March, allowing free changes and refunds for tickets touching Bahrain, Iran, Iraq, Jordan, Kuwait, Lebanon, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Syria, and the UAE. The economic consequences for the Turkish aviation industry are significant, as the affected routes are among the most profitable short and medium-haul connections in the entire network. The cancellations have effectively severed one of Istanbul's key connective arteries to the wider world. Capacity on alternative routes is limited, and schedules remain subject to change as airlines reroute around closed skies over Iran, Iraq, and parts of the Gulf. This is the contradiction at the heart of Istanbul's geographic position that the crisis has exposed. The same proximity to the Middle East that makes Istanbul the world's most strategically valuable connecting hub in normal conditions makes it uniquely vulnerable when the Middle East becomes a conflict zone. Dubai is far enough from Iran that aircraft can fly out of harm's way on different routing. Istanbul is close enough to the region that the airspace disruptions ripple directly into its own flight paths. Turkish carriers are adapting by tweaking departure banks, increasing block times, and in some cases, upgauging aircraft to consolidate capacity on routes that remain operational. Core trunk routes linking Turkey with major European, North American, and Asian cities continue to operate, and the main visible impact for passengers transiting Istanbul is more frequent schedule changes and longer connection buffers on certain long-haul itineraries as airlines build in extra time for potential rerouting. The longer-term picture is more clearly in Turkish's favor. Analysts highlight that Turkish Airlines' model focuses on funneling connecting traffic through Istanbul rather than relying primarily on point-to-point markets. And this hub-and-spoke approach allows the carrier to serve thinner city pairs with competitive one-stop itineraries, capturing demand that might otherwise flow through Gulf or European hubs. When the Gulf hubs restore operations, a proportion of the connecting traffic that was redirected through Istanbul or Singapore will have established new preferred routing patterns. Some corporate travel managers will have discovered that Istanbul works for their needs. Some passengers will have realized they prefer the Turkish connection, that traffic will not automatically return to the Gulf. The question worth asking at the end of all this is what the Gulf crisis reveals about Turkish Airlines' strategic position that was not fully visible before it happened. The geographic advantage is real and durable. Istanbul's position at the intersection of Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Middle East is not going to change. The network that Turkish has built to exploit that position, 120 plus countries, 300 plus destinations, the largest international network of any single airline on Earth, is genuinely without parallel. But the current crisis has also revealed a specific vulnerability that Istanbul's proximity to the Middle East creates. The same geographic position that generates the connectivity advantage also places Istanbul within the disruption radius of any serious regional conflict. Turkish Airlines is not an observer of the Gulf crisis. It is a participant in it, having suspended its own Middle East network while simultaneously attempting to serve as the alternative hub that displaced passengers need. Turkish Airlines chairman stated that despite an exceptionally challenging and unpredictable operating environment, the financial success of 2025 showed the airline's ability to adapt to rapidly changing commercial and geopolitical conditions, thanks to its diversified revenue structure. That diversification across 120 countries, across passenger and cargo operations, across narrow-body and wide-body missions, is precisely what allows Turkish to absorb a disruption of this scale without the existential financial threat that faces a carrier like Emirates, whose entire operation flows through a single closed hub. The geographic advantage was always there. Istanbul has always sat at the intersection of continents. What Turkish Airlines did was look at that geography, build a network scaled to exploit it fully, and create an airline so diversified across so many markets that when one region burns, the rest of the network keeps flying. That is not just good geography. That is good strategy.